Welcome to Be Brilliant with Jing Lang, the podcast dedicated to those seeking to excel in every aspect of their lives. Through conversations with her guests, Jing will tease out personal stories, helpful tips, and proven strategies to help you elevate your life and reach your highest potential. Get ready to dive in and discover what it means to be truly brilliant. And now, here's your host, Jing Lang.
Alicia Rollo is Director of Education and International Affairs at the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. She is a creative leader with more than 25 years' experience in the nonprofit association sector. She is passionate about the development of professionals with an emphasis on communications, leadership, and professionalism in the public interest. Good morning, Alicia. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Jing. Thank you so much.
Well, let's get right to it. You led the charge in building and launching a new CIA education program. Tell us about the journey.
I love talking about this journey, and I often joke that it started in 1970, which is also the year I was born. Yeah, don't tell anyone. But when I was actually hired in 2010, and I started reading transcripts of CIA meetings that talked about there must be a better way to educate actuaries. We should, leverage universities more. We should take full accountability and ownership for our education system. And one of the key messages that I received when I was hired was, you need to be a change agent for the CIA. And so that's where my journey began, with understanding the past to try to figure out where we could potentially go. So hard things take a long time. It's been incredibly, incredibly challenging, but incredibly rewarding at the same time. From 2010, we started our university accreditation system, where we leveraged the university education from 11 universities across Canada, building on that relationship. Fast forward, today we have our own full end-to-end education system with our own examinations, modules, etc., starting from university all the way through to fellowship. So it's an incredibly exciting time. We're still in the middle of rolling all of these products out, but it's going incredibly well. And I'm so very proud of our volunteers, our staff, everyone, suppliers, contractors who are involved in helping us make this successful.
Wow. Can you remind me nowadays, for the students who are enrolled in the universities today, are they expected to get a CIA once they graduate from university?
So I'll give you a little bit of background before I talk about today. So initially, the University Accreditation Program was based on a mapping of the CIA syllabus to the SOA or CAS preliminary education syllabus. And then we worked with universities to map their courses to that syllabus. And so students would receive credit for preliminary exams at the SOA or CAS based on the mapping of their university courses. So they may need to complete 2 or 3 or 4 courses mapped to, for example, exam P or FM. And the CIA would grant credit for those preliminary examinations based on the completion of those courses at a minimum grade. So that was the way it used to work. As of fall 2020, the way that our university accreditation program works now is that students will complete a degree in actuarial science at one of our 11 accredited universities. They must complete a set of mandatory courses as part of their degree. It's not necessarily mandatory courses from the university's perspective, but mandatory from the CIA's perspective to ensure that they are meeting our minimum syllabus requirements. There are no grade requirements. The universities that we work with have their own grade requirements for entry to the program as well as graduation. We've worked with them long enough. We trust their internal quality assurance systems. So a degree in actuarial science from one of those accredited universities allows a student to register and write our ACI capstone examination, which is not trying to retest at an individual topic level probability, statistics, financial mathematics, all of that. But it's really testing at a more benchmark level that candidates have the requisite skills that the CIA deems necessary to become an associate of the CIA or ACIA. So they do a couple of modules while still at university, and then they do the capstone exam after they complete their accredited degree.
Wow, that sounds a lot more streamlined. compared to what it used to be. That's great. Of the 11 universities, geographically, where are they distributed?
We have accredited universities all across Canada. We have universities in Quebec, in Ontario, in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. So the geographic representation is quite good. We would love to see some accredited universities from the Atlantic provinces, though. There are a couple of strong universities there that we hope we'll be able to welcome into the fold soon.
That's nice. And you were saying that it doesn't matter what grade they graduate, like if they have A plus versus C, so long they graduate, it is sufficient.
Yep, they need to successfully complete their accredited degree. So whatever the university's criteria for graduation is what we accept. But
Okay,
they must have those mandatory courses. And of course, they must
right,
pass our exam. It's an
right.
online open book 4-hour exam for core topics with 2-hour options in short-term or long-term mathematics. So a 6-hour exam in total. And it's open book, meaning they can access their resources, but that doesn't mean it's easier. These are difficult business problems that we think will really help bridge the world of university and the world of work.
Absolutely. And if my experience served me right, if you have the time to search for resources, you're probably not going to pass.
That's absolutely correct.
When I was writing, I got my FSA, and then I have to take the 3-day PEC.
PEC,
What did it stand for? Can you remind me?
practice education course. Yeah,
Right.
the course began in the year 2000. We ran for 17 years with that open book examination. But you're right. I fondly remember all of the candidates coming to that exam with their great big binders full of post-it notes so that they would be able to find the references easily. And so it's a different format. We're online now, but the same principles apply. You need to know your stuff. As you know, actuaries, you don't have to memorize standards of practice and regulation legislation to do your day-to-day work. And that's really the principle under which we do open book exams. So you know your stuff, but you have the resources at your fingertips that you need.
That made complete sense. Thank you for that. I remember when I was going to Ottawa for the pack, and my carry-on bag was, of course, full of binders. And when I tried to lift it up above me on the baggage claim, there was a stewardess. She was trying to help me, and she's like, "This, what do you have in here? Gold bars?" So yeah, thousands of pages of paper are very, very heavy. I'm glad that it's online now. Well, you are not only Director of Education, Alicia, you're also the Director of International Affairs. Can you tell us what does your role in international affairs entail?
Thank you for the question. I love to talk about this as well. And it's interesting, the education portfolio and the international portfolio are very much aligned. Because education is such an important topic around the world for all actuarial organizations, it's really important that we're connected to those to what's happening internationally. So one part of my role is to facilitate our participation in the IAA, the International Actuarial Association. And so I work very closely with our International Affairs Council to make sure that we have the right people in terms of CIA volunteers participating on the right committees and forums, working groups, etc., internationally, so that we not only contribute to the development of the profession globally, but also learn an incredible amount from our activities there. So we get to bring home amazing knowledge and information that helps us develop the profession here at home in Canada. So my role is a little bit of that, coordinating with the IAA, as well as keeping connections with other actuarial organizations for the purposes of, say, mutual recognition or simply collaboration. And the other piece is connection with affiliate groups. And so not only internationally, but here in Canada as well. So specialty groups such as NAWA, the Network for Actuarial Women and Allies, for example, IABA, the International Association of Black Actuaries. All of those organizations and affiliates are also part of the relationship development and relationship management piece of my role. But at the core is really the qualification of members.
Wow, that's much broader than I thought. You do a lot.
I do, I do. And I also look after our professional development programs as well. So the organization of our meetings, conferences, specialty seminars, for example. So, but it's all very interconnected. So education for qualification as an associate or fellow, and then continuing education programs for members to be able to maintain those qualifications, and then international to be able to leverage those opportunities to further build their skills and learn and participate on the global stage. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it very much. I feel very fortunate.
Well, you mentioned that you joined the organization about 15 years ago. How has the institute evolved during your time here?
So I can answer that from two perspectives, actually. So there's internal, the CIA head office, and then there's also the CIA as an organization. So I'll start with internal first, and the two are very connected. From an organization perspective, the head office, um, I think when I joined it was, first of all, it was called the Secretariat, which, as the name suggests, is very administrative, sort of supporting role. What comes to mind is doing minutes and preparing meeting agendas and supporting committees and councils and the board. And that still happens. But what has shifted is the CIA head office is far more involved in the day-to-day operations, helping the board to set direction for strategy for the Institute. And so there's a much more strategic connection between the head office and the board. And we have certainly hired more professionals. So it has moved from being a less administrative organization to a more professionally led organization. So that's internal. And external, as I said, the two are very aligned. The CIA has become much more strategic in terms of setting long-term vision. I think also taking fuller accountability and responsibility for the designations it grants, becoming a more mature organization with respect to education and research, more active in terms of public positions. The organization has matured and has really, I think, blossomed, and it's been great to see.
What's your expectation for the next 15 years?
For the next 15 years, I think the CIA will continue to mature. Actuaries will have new opportunities, which the CIA, I think, will take a more active role. I think there'll be greater opportunities for relationship building with employers, with regulators, with other actuarial and non-actuarial organizations around the world. I think there will be more focus on member services to ensure that members have what they need. It's not that they don't right now, but I think we'll see even greater emphasis on that, while still, of course, preserving the CI's guiding principle number one, which is the public interest, to put the needs of the public ahead of the individual needs of members or even the association. But I think we'll see a greater mix of all of those needs as the organization matures and delivers more of a greater variety of programs and services.
Can you give me some examples of what those might be?
Well, I think the research function, for sure. We've just spent the last couple of years redesigning the CI's research function. And so once the building blocks are there, you'll see greater connection, I think, to both academic and applied research, and the CIA taking more responsibility. With education, we're only scratching the surface right now. I see greater alignment with the business community, having more of the business community involved in the development of our educational programs, basic services to members, more products, whether they be education-based or standards-based or guidance. I think we'll see just more of everything. And I know that sounds a little bit scary. How are we going to do all of this? But we scale in a graceful way, I'll say. We try not to bite off more than we can chew. We start conservatively and build on our successes over time.
How many staff members are there right now at the CI?
We're just over 40 employees, which is fairly small considering the size of the membership, but we work in partnership with volunteers. So the CIA staff, as I mentioned, come from a variety of professional backgrounds. We're not all actuaries, obviously. We have 3 actuaries on staff, but we rely very, very heavily on our volunteer committees and councils and the board. So we work in partnership to deliver our programs and services together.
You mentioned the board, so I know there's a recently board-approved framework that you proposed that the CIA now use to assess whether something new come up, whether that's an emerging topic or a practice area. Can you tell us more about the thinking went behind that initiative?
Yeah, thank you. So we conceived this, it's a competency versus practice framework, and it was really designed to help solve a problem that the CIA would face from time to time. When I first started with the CIA, the hot topic was ERM. And of course, climate change became a hot topic, predictive analytics, obviously artificial intelligence. And so one of the things that the organization struggled with is when one of these topics arises, how do we know what to do with it? Should it be, for example, a competency that all actuaries should have in their toolkit? Or is it the beginnings of the development of a new area of practice? Are there a critical mass of actuaries forming? And do we need to support the development of the profession in that way? So this competency framework is really the decision framework. The hope is at the end of the day, it gives us a clearer path forward on how to treat that topic.
Predictive analytics is now a practice area, right?
So interesting. I would argue that predictive analytics is not necessarily a practice area. The CIA made the decision back in 2016 that it needed to become core to the syllabus, that it was a skill that all actuaries should have. So we built it into our syllabus at the associate and the fellowship level. And fast forward many years later, we insist that all members have some core predictive analytics training as part of their associate designation. And so some practice areas may leverage it more than others, but I think from our perspective, we would say that it's not a standalone practice area like, for example, an actuary working in life insurance or in property and casualty insurance or group benefits. All of the practice areas use predictive analytics to some degree. So that's a great example. And I would put ERM in the same bucket. Actually, enterprise risk management and risk management in general are core to the actuarial skill set. And I think we've seen similarly with the Society of Actuaries and the Casualty Actuarial Society's education system, risk management has been integrated across all streams. So while some actuaries may specialize, it's not necessarily a standalone practice area. There's some combination of competency and practice. So not always cut and dried.
I see. I'm aware that there is a predictive analytics practice committee. So that's why I assume that it is a practice area. But thank you for clarifying. That is not all one way or the other. It's a mix, depends on how it is integrated and used.
That's right, exactly.
Can you share some thoughts on
I feel humbled by the question. I consider you one of the CIA's greatest in-house AI resources. For me, when discussions of AI first came onto the scene, we took a similar approach as we have done for the other topics that we've just talked about. So trying to understand what the impact is on the work of actuaries and therefore how to ensure that we evolve our member skill set, not only in pre-qualification, but ongoing professional development. My personal opinion is that AI is a tool, that it's critical for actuaries to understand the implications. Will they work directly with AI? Possibly not. Some will not. But at the end of the day, it needs to be understood, the impacts. And I think actuaries bring a unique skill set to be able to determine the long-term business solutions that come out of AI applications. And so moving away from the highly technical, being able to understand and make the results relevant to the business community.
Absolutely. Explainability, all those are really important aspects of AI. because we can't just take whatever it produces for granted. We still need to apply actual judgment. We still need to validate. And I agree with you. I do feel AI is an amazing tool, that it's a huge net positive for our profession.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that we think about, I would say, on a daily basis now with our online open book examinations. One of the questions that I often get is, aren't you afraid that students will be using AI to answer actuarial exam questions? And my answer is no, not really. If they try, first of all, there's a huge risk to themselves because we explicitly say that it can't be used. And so they run the risk of potentially being in breach of a candidate code of conduct and potentially being excluded from the education system on a long-term or permanent basis. But also AI is just not capable yet of answering the types of business problems that we're using in our examinations. And so I 100% agree. The application of judgment and the interpretation of results is critical.
I'm glad we're aligned. Well, you mentioned leadership and communication skills. So typically for our actual training, it's very technical. But I know you have been advocating for earlier leadership and communication training. Why is that important to you?
I think we can all benefit from enhanced communication skills, enhanced leadership skills. And I don't think it matters whether you aspire to be the CEO of a large insurance company or if you're just leading a team. I think the skills that we are trying to develop in actuaries are beneficial regardless of your long-term career plans. They help you be a better team leader, a better team contributor. They help even in non-actuarial, in home and community. And I think, there's really no end to where leadership skills can help us become better people, better professionals. And so we're doing our best to incorporate it into our associate and fellow education, as well as in our continuing professional development opportunities. But at the end of the day, it's up to the individual what they decide to do with it. We're putting it in the toolkit and it's there for use and therefore adoption. Individual needs and preferences will dictate how it's leveraged.
You just mentioned toolkit. Tell us more about that.
The toolkit, that's what I like to call the set of skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities that we try to impart on our members as they become qualified. And we want to give them the most well-rounded toolkit possible. And actuaries are incredibly creative, brilliant, technical professionals. And I think they have huge capacity to contribute to society. And so just making sure that we give them all of those opportunities, the wide array of skill sets that they can potentially leverage for their own personal success.
What is your personal perception of the actual profession when you join the company?
So coming from a background in human resources, I knew that it was a well-regarded profession, and I felt that I had something to contribute to their development. But what I've learned since, and I might have mentioned this earlier, is I think actuaries are brilliant. They're not only technically amazingly smart, but what comes with that is creativity and I think a really keen sense of humor. They're passionate about what they do and the contribution that they can make. And I just find that incredibly inspiring. So honestly, I feel like the last 15 years has gone by like that. It's gone by in a flash because I love every day. I love our members. I love the profession and what it's capable of. And so I'm honored actually to be able to contribute to the development of our future professionals.
I'm so flattered that you use creativity and humor to describe our brand because we're typically not known as that, but it's amazing that you see us that way because sometimes it's clear from an observer perspective as opposed to when you are the thing.
That's right. And there's a difference in, reading about what actuaries do and actually knowing actuaries. And I think, it comes from, so maybe if you met one actuary in a crowd, you might attribute those qualities to that particular individual. But after spending pretty much every day of the last 15 years in groups of actuaries, whether it be committees or our board or being at CIA meetings, professional development meetings, or internationally at IA meetings, there's definitely a theme. It's not just an individual characteristic. I think as a profession, really actuaries are amazing. I really enjoy all of my interactions and with you as well, obviously. Yeah.
Well, is there anything you would change, Alicia, about the actuarial brand, the actuarial image?
That's a really interesting question. I don't think so. I think I would just, make it more well known. The brand is fantastic the way it is, but I would like more people, more businesses. I would like there to be more opportunities for actuaries to contribute because I do think they have so much to give. And so by raising the brand, by, hopefully making the toolkit again more well known, that we can enhance opportunities for actuaries in more non-traditional areas of work. A lot has been done, but I think there's so much more that we can do to raise the profile.
Let's look for us now, because I know
Yeah,
the CIA is a strong supporter of the Actuarial Student National Association. Tell us more.
that's correct. And again, going back to creating closer ties with students. One of the things that you talked about, the practice education course a little while ago. And because the CIA had outsourced most of its education system, what that meant was really late awareness of the CIA. So individuals were about to become fellows and about to take on all the responsibilities of being a fellow, but really had no knowledge of the CIA. So one of the things that we did early on, along with our university accreditation system to build closer ties to students, is to really enhance our relationship with the Actuarial Students National Association. I have huge respect for these students. Not only do they organize an annual convention, attract somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 attendees, but they're also studying. They're doing their co-op and internships. They're at university, and they still have, their own lives and families and all of that. So I think that they are hugely impressive young professionals that will be the stars of tomorrow. The CIA and ASNA have a memorandum of understanding. So we felt it was so important that we actually created a strategic partnership. So the CIA is the grand patron sponsor of the annual convention, but we don't just support financially. We do fun things like we take a photographer to the convention to do professional headshots for the students. We run a career lounge. Of course, we run sessions and we're there at the booth. But apart from the convention, we also support ASNA year round. So we give them a Zoom license, for example, so that they can run their webcasts or just have meetings of their executive. In the past, we've supported them with translation. Back in the day before Zoom, it was with teleconference services, which is like such a funny word to say now. And really, we're just always open to supporting them however they need. We have travel bursaries that we sponsor to help students from either out east or out west get to the convention, depending on where it's being held. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarship, 3 scholarships that we've produced in partnership with ASNA, and those are granted every year at the convention. So we're continually just trying to find ways that we can support them because we just honestly, we love them. They're incredible young professionals and we want to give them every opportunity to succeed. So that's been my mission.
That's amazing. How is the CIA's relationship with the SOA now, given that the CIA is now doing its own education?
I'm happy that you asked that question. Sometimes people are nervous to ask that question, but the reason that the CIA created its own education system is really, as I said earlier, because the organization matured to a point where it really needed to take more responsibility and accountability for the designations that we grant. When you outsource something, you cede a little bit of control And we didn't have the flexibility or the nimbleness to be able to do what we felt was right for the qualification of actuaries. It's not ever that we thought the SOA education system or the CAS education system were not fantastic education systems. They are. We relied on them exclusively for many years, and we have many highly, highly qualified members as a result of those education systems. So the relationship, I think, is still very good. We collaborate where it makes sense to collaborate, and we do our own thing where it makes sense for each organization to do their own thing. The society, both the SOA and the CAS, really are global education providers and research providers. The CIA is concerned with producing the best possible Canadian actuaries. Now, that's not to say that CIA actuaries can only work in Canada, but our concern is with the Canadian context. It's with Canadian regulations, standards of practice, etc. The toolkit that actuaries receive from the CIA is absolutely transportable around the world, but our concern is here where, we have different aims and different goals.
So for a student who is in school right now, does he or she need to choose between whether she will go through the CIA route versus the CAS and SOA route?
Yeah, to some degree, they do need to choose. So if they want to leverage their accredited university degree and not be writing professional exams at the same time, and then they want to use our pathway one. So we developed 3 qualification pathways so that candidates and students would have options available to them. So pathway one is 100% CIA, starting with the accredited degree, CIA modules, exams, professionalism, education, and then fellowship exams and modules, experience, etc. Pathway 2 is for candidates who want to leverage SOA or CAS exams at the associate level. So they'd like to become an ASA or ACAS, for example, or an associate from one of the other countries around the world that we have mutual recognition with, such as Australia or South Africa, for example. So they can leverage the associate level education that they get elsewhere and then come to the CIA if they want to use our fellowship exams. So in that case, in pathway 2, somebody would be an ASA / FCIA, for example. So they would stop the education from the other body at the associate level and finish with us. But then we also have pathway 3, which is for candidates who want to hold 2 fellow level designations. And so in that case, this is probably more the traditional way that actuaries earned their FCIA in the past. So they would complete their full FSA or their full FCAS, for example, and then come to the CIA and complete a couple of little requirements depending on whether they did Canadian exams as part of their first designation and so on, and then become a fellow. So the 3 qualification pathways were designed to provide those options and opportunities regardless of whether or what an individual's plans might be. So they don't have to have one or the other. There are ways to have it all if they would.
Yeah, and as you articulating the 3 pathways, I recognize that I did it the third way because when I was going through school, the first 2 were available at the time.
That's right.
I would recommend to aspiring students who is watching the podcast, it is helpful to have both fellows in both institutions. However, while you're in school, it is really good to focus on school. So if you are able to get ACIA first just by completing your degree, I think that's amazing. Ultimately, I still would advocating for having both fellow on FSA, FCAS, FCIA, depends on what track you are. But in school, it's good to focus on what you have. If ACIA can get you there fastest, I would definitely go for that.
Yeah,
Personal opinion.
Yeah, thank you. And that's exactly why we've designed it the way we have, because again, coming back to that toolkit, it's developed by having a wider array of skills. So if you don't have to focus on writing professional exams while you're at university, you can focus on your studies, as you said, but it also gives you time to participate in important activities like actuarial science clubs, organizations like ASNA, getting involved with community work or other activities that help you build those skills, the relationship development skills, networking skills. all of that. So we really think that it's a strong advantage for those candidates in Pathway 1.
Thank you. Well, Alicia, for your team, you've organized the annual conference, and next year it's a 60-year anniversary. How has the planning been going?
Going well. Obviously, a large event takes lots of people and lots of planning. We're also planning a gala reception in conjunction with the conference. I can't give too much away. We'd like some of that to be a surprise, but registration will open probably the end of February, early March. It will be held here in Ottawa at 2 venues, the Westin Hotel and the Fairmont Chateau Laurier Hotel, which is a lovely venue. That's where the gala will be held. I can promise that it will be fun. It will be inspiring. It will be a memorable event. And so I encourage all of your podcast listeners and viewers to consider coming.
Thank you, Alicia. One last thing. What will be something you would love to share with our audience that you haven't already?
The last thing that I would leave your listeners and viewers with is just the notion of service to others. And I think actuaries know that very well based on the way that they contribute. But it's something that drives me every day, is knowing the impact that we have on others' lives. And I would encourage actuaries and other professionals just to find that thing that drives you, that gives meaning to your work, where you wake up every day and you know why you're doing what you're doing. That's really what drives me, and that I hope is motivational to others. I love what I do. Every day is actually a joy to work for the CIA and to work with actuaries. And so I wish that for everyone else.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Alicia. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jing. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Be Brilliant with Jing Lang. We hope you found valuable insights and motivation to fuel your journey. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And share this with 3 people in your life endeavoring to achieve personal greatness. Remember, brilliance is within you, and every step you take brings you closer to your best self. Keep striving, keep shining, and until next time, stay brilliant.